carbon that's coming up is the oil that's recovered through enhanced oil recovery. That money actually reduces the cost of the sequestration because it is in and of itself providing the cost of the sequestration. What the Liberals are doing with this budget is simply spending more money only on sequestration. There's no return on the investment at all, so it actually costs everybody more money that we could be investing in research and development for other clean technologies.
Well, that's all the time we have for that. Déclaration de député, statements by members. The honourable member for Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Speaker, the Hockey Marathon for Kids, also known as the world's longest hockey game, was played in Chestermere, Alberta, directly east of my constituency of Calgary Skyview this April. Hardworking players and volunteers raised nearly $1 million for the Alberta Children's Hospital Foundation to support research into childhood cancer. They played 261 hours to break the previous Guinness World Record by almost 9 hours. 40 hockey players spent 10.5 days away from their friends and family without leaving the arena. I would like to congratulate all the players, donors, family, and friends who made this happen. A special thank you goes out to Alex Salat and Leslie Plumley from Hockey Marathon, to Seifa Kuner from the Alberta Children's Hospital Foundation, and to Carrie Irwin and Satvir Sahota for their contributions to this special event. I'm excited to see the record be broken once again next year.
The honourable member for Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, today is World Intellectual Property Day, or IP Day. And in Canada, we are celebrating the importance of innovation, ingenuity, and invention. Without Canada, the world would not have insulin, the snowmobile and the Sea-Doo, peanut butter, or the zipper. This year's international theme is IP and Youth, innovating for a better future. Today, we are celebrating our young innovators like Chad Gershwitz from Belleville, who already at 34 years old has founded 2 successful companies, including Renify, which provides an innovative new way to help landlords with their tenants. It is our young innovators who will develop new inventions in bioscience, clean energy, quantum computing, and AI to better use Canada's existing natural resources, create wealth, new businesses, and drive creation, which will kill inflation. Mr. Speaker, intellectual property is the currency of innovation, and we need to fully invest in and support our young innovators who are using this currency to innovate a better future for all Canadians. Happy IP Day.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Brampton South.
Mr. Speaker, we all have someone in our lives who has been touched by cancer. This month, we spread hope to the cancer fighters, including my mom. And we pray for those who have lost their lives battling cancer. Last month, I met Dhara Vishani from Brampton South, just weeks before she lost her battle to stage 4 breast cancer. Mr. Speaker, time is so precious, and Dhara conveyed that every day. Healthcare workers and organizations like the Canadian Cancer Society are leading the fight against cancer. Canada has made breakthroughs in the treatment, detection, and prevention of cancer, but there will always be more work to do. Early detection is key, but too often we get so busy taking care of others and we forget to take care of ourselves. I encourage all Canadians to prioritize their health and get screenings, as well as raise awareness to support those affected by cancer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Laurentides-Labelle. Mr. Speaker, today I have the pleasure of sharing that the Dagenet family has won 2 awards. This family has owned hardware stores since 1928 in Saint-Sauveur in my riding of Laurentides-Labelle. The first award given by the Association québécoise de la quincaillerie et des matériaux de construction is the Heritage Award, and the second is the prestigious Prix du Bâtisseur for their success. It was given by Rona to Mr. André Dagenet. Mr. Dagenet was at the helm, along with his wife, Lise Rochon, for over 50 years. The next generation is ready. His children, Annie and Martin, as well as his son-in-law, Philippe Beauséjour, are continuing the Dagenet family business. I send them my congratulations, and I wish them a long life, and above all, to maintain, along with their 160 employees, the spirit of family and generosity for which they are known within their community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for Vimy. Mr. Speaker, last weekend I had the honour of joining members of the Armenian community to commemorate the 107th anniversary of the genocide. We heard very personal stories from their families about members who had experienced or witnessed these atrocities. The pain never subsided. On April 24th, 1915 is the day when the Ottoman Turks began a genocide that led to the death of 1.5 million Armenians. Shining a light on the truth and making people aware is essential for healing. The determination of the Armenian people have allowed them to maintain their culture, religion, their identity, and to have a free country. I will always stand forever with the Armenian people in Armenia, and I commit to never forgetting, and I would ask us all to never forget.
The Honourable Member for Medicine Hat, Cardston Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'm pleased to highlight the Dave Rosdeba South Alberta Flight Academy, located in my riding. Based out of Eagle Butte High School, it is a partnership between Prairie Rose School Division and Super T Aviation. The program consists of grade 10 to 12 students who combine their traditional high school curriculum with flight school and provides them the opportunity to earn their private pilot's license. Students participate in ground school, where they study everything from basic airplane parts and discovery flights and flight simulators to detailed aviation structures and navigation. By grade 12, these students have essentially completed ground school and are preparing for their private pilot's license exam. And what's unique is every year each student flies within their program. One day a week, these students participate in the building of a full-sized kit-based aircraft that the Academy intends on using within the program. It's inspirational, Mr. Speaker, to see these aviation-passionate students prepare for their own futures. I'm excited to return to the Academy in late June to take flight with these new pilots. Well done, everyone.
The Honourable Member for Oakville North.
It takes a village to build a community. There are 5 tiny homes being built in Halton as part of a pilot program to serve the Chippewas of the Nawash unceded First Nation. This means affordable emergency housing options will be available on reserve, giving community members a sense of dignity, independence, safety, and so much more. Notre Dame Catholic High School is one of the schools where students have explored skilled trades, getting hands-on experience. Over 57 students have participated in the project across 2 semesters, plus an additional 38 students who joined the after-school program, all led by the inspirational teacher, Mr. Alan Nason. Recently, I joined Minister of Housing, Chippewas of the Nawash Chief Veronica Smith, partners from Habitat for Humanity and Notre Dame students and teachers to tour the tiny homes and speak of the impact that these homes will have. Congratulations to all involved in making a difference. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And I wanted to apologize, I only got part of the riding name there, so it's Oakville North Burlington. The Honourable Member for London North Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In mid-April, I had the opportunity to visit Winnipeg on behalf of the Minister of National Revenue. While there, I met with public servants at the Canada Revenue Agency's Winnipeg Tax Centre. They have many responsibilities, and I commend their dedication for their work. I also had the opportunity to engage with local organizations that are using the Community Volunteer Income Tax Program. Through this program, free tax clinics are made available for eligible members of communities with modest or low incomes. My sincere gratitude to Seed Winnipeg, Friends of Filipino Immigrants Manitoba, and Akoy Francophone for their work and for sharing their experiences with me. Beyond providing tax clinics, these organizations also play a vital role in helping newcomers who are filing their taxes for the first time. This important work is not only about taxation, however, but also about facilitating integration as well. Finally, Mr. Speaker, with the deadline fast approaching, a reminder to all Canadians to file their taxes in order to get access to the benefits and credits that they are eligible for. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, we're celebrating National Volunteer Week in Canada, and I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank the many volunteers in Kootenay, Columbia, who give their time for the betterment of our communities. Recently, I had the honor of visiting the annual Rod and Gun Dinner in Fernie, British Columbia. The event, attended by over 700 anglers, hunters, conservationists, was an outstanding success. and I was pleased to meet and thank the many volunteers who contribute to ongoing conservation efforts. Established in 1899, the Fernie Rod and Gun Club is the oldest in BC. Influenced by the conservation movement in the early 1900s, its members are passionate about protecting and conserving fish and wildlife. This important work fosters a healthy sporting life for many of the hunters and anglers who live and work in Kootenay, Columbia. BC's conservation movement started a century ago in the Kootenays, and I am proud of the dedicated volunteer families like the Rokas who continue to give their time for this noble cause. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good job.
The Honourable Member for Orléans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had the great pleasure of meeting representative of the Canadian Alliance for the Hargeisa Market and the Somaliland community members. It allowed me to learn about this small country, which has experienced tragic moments since the fire that destroyed the Hargeisa market. This market is the heart of the economic and business community. It destroyed thousands of businesses, mainly led by women who employed thousands of workers, producers, and others. It contributed to $2 billion to Somaliland's economy. I want to tell the members of the House about the impact that the fire has caused and the displacement of thousands of people, a number of whom have lost their main source of income. I also rise to highlight the leadership of a resident of Orleans, Ms. Rhoda Moose, and the representatives of the Canadian Alliance in their efforts to bring awareness to this issue in the rebuilding of the Hargeisa market. You have been heard.
I just want to remember members to keep their conversations in the lobbies if possible, and to keep the conversations as low as possible here in the chamber where we're hearing these great statements by members. The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Mr. Speaker, April is Parkinson's Awareness Month. Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurological disease in the world. There are more than 100,000 people in Canada living with Parkinson's, and more than 30 Canadians are diagnosed with Parkinson's every day. This number is expected to increase to 50 new diagnoses per day in the next decade. There is no diagnostic test for this disease, no treatment to stop it from progressing, and no cure. It's important to reduce the waiting time for patients to receive medications, movement therapies, and deep brain stimulation. I'd like to thank Parkinson's Canada for committing to transforming the lives of people with Parkinson's. It's due to my friend and Barrie Innisfil resident Greg McGuinness, who advocate for better diagnostics, treatments, and a cure for Parkinson's, that this will be made possible. Mr. Speaker, we need to raise awareness for Parkinson's so that we can all work together to find a cause and a cure. Every Canadian deserves a good quality of life. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Souris Moose Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's Soccer announced the roster for the upcoming 2022 International Federation of Cerebral Palsy Football Men's World Cup in Salou, Spain. The tournament runs from April 27th to May 16th. Our 13-man team will be in Group A, which includes England, Venezuela, and the Netherlands. A total of 15 countries will be competing at the World Cup event, and this continues to show how Canada has advanced in the world of football. Furthermore, they are actively recruiting for a female team. As someone who has always been a strong advocate for participation in sport, as well as for the inclusion at all levels of ability, I am thrilled to highlight the success that Team Canada has had. I'd like to especially highlight one player, Chris Fawcett, who has always been near and dear to my heart. After all, he is my nephew, and I could not be prouder and more excited to cheer him on. I encourage all members of this House and Canadians across the country to tune in and watch these outstanding athletes as they represent Canada on their quest to winning the IFCPF World Cup. Go Canada, go!
The Honourable Member for Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in the House today to speak about the important work that Canada-NATO Parliamentary Association is doing to support Ukraine. Earlier this month, I led a delegation to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly spring session in Athens to discuss the Assembly's response to Russia's unprovoked and illegal war against Ukraine, as well as to discuss the steps the Assembly is taking to address the fundamentally changed geopolitical situation. After hearing from Ruslan Stefanchuk, chair of the Ukrainian Rada, and Yehor Chednev, Ukrainian rep to the NATO PA, the Standing Committee voiced our continued united and unwavering solidarity with Ukraine. NATO Parliamentary Assembly members also adopted the first draft of a declaration on standing with Ukraine, indicating our strong commitment to building a united global coalition to support Ukraine with all possible assistance, including crippling sanctions, military equipment, and humanitarian assistance. In line with the values and principles of NATO, we will be there for as long as it takes to support Ukraine's democracy and to ensure global peace and security. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Elmwood Transcona.
It's with a heavy heart today that I rise to honor the life and memory of John King. John was born and raised in Elmwood. It was there that he met the love of his life, Linda, and there that they raised their children, Brett, Ashley, and Megan. For 37 years, John enjoyed a career with the federal government working with at-risk youth. I first heard of John when he was working with my sister Tessa and many others to save the Kelvin Community Club. That work was critical to the creation of Clara Hughes Recreation Park, and John provided leadership the whole way through. This was not the only mark that John left on our community. He was a founding member of the Glenelg Neighborhood Association and a member of the Elmwood Bear Clan, the Northeast Winnipeg Historical Society, Juicers Hockey Club, and Happy Days on Henderson. John's community activism was rooted in a love for people and a spirit of service. His presence will be sorely missed. On behalf of all the people in our community that had the good fortune of working with John and all the people that will benefit from his work for decades to come, I want to express sincere condolences to his family and thanks to John for his good work.
The honourable member for Repentigny. April 22nd has been Earth Day since 1970, but sometimes it feels like Groundhog Day because nothing has changed for a very long time despite the clear declaration of an emergency by the scientific community. Major changes must come from governments, private enterprise that are moving at a snail's pace. And this is when they're not backtracking, as we saw with the recent heresy of this government to increase oil production. We need to channel our outrage and energy into action. I invite everybody to take part in a demonstration taking place on May 8th in Quebec City. Yes, it's on Sunday, Mother's Day, and no, it's not by chance. Mother's Day is an opportunity to unite for a noble cause. In 1870, in the U.S., Julia Ward Howe invited mothers around the world to unite for peace. And on May 8th, let's unite to support the planet Earth in the true spirit of Mother's Day. Let's take action to protect our present, our future, and that of our children. Thank you.
The honourable member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, on April 1st, about 25 people in my riding of Saskatoon West lost their jobs because of an imposed federal vaccination requirement.
Unbelievable.
Their employer, Maple Leaf Foods, is federally regulated by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and as such must follow federal rules. On April 4th, Sean, who lost his job, wrote to me, wondering how he was going to put food on the table and provide for his family. When I originally posted about this on Facebook and Twitter, the parliamentary secretary to the government House leader mocked Sean and my other unemployed constituents. So much for liberal sunny ways. While countries around the world lift restrictions, here in Canada, we have a government that tunes out actual science and substitutes it with their own political science. This NDP Liberal government is creating division when it forces people out of work, making it impossible for them to provide for their family. It's time to end the mandates, end the division, and work to heal our country so Canadians like Sean can get back to work and support their families.
The honourable member for Alfred Pellin. Mr. Speaker, blonde locks flying as he glided on ice at the speed of light. Number 10 wove in and out with the strength and speed. And as he scored, the streets, the neighborhoods, the city, the province exploded in joy. These are still very strong memories of the blonde demon whose departure has left all of Quebec in mourning. A best and most prolific scorer of his generation. He won 5 Stanley Cups with the Montreal Canadiens. I had the opportunity to meet Guy Lafleur, and I was struck by how this living legend was so easy to talk to, so accessible. His name will remain engraved in our hearts, not only for his prowess on the ice, but he led an entire generation to dream big, but also for the great man that he was.
Was and will remain forever more the pride of Montreal, Quebec, and the entire nation. Thank you, Guy. Rest in peace. Merci, Guy.
Thank you, Guy.
Before we get started, I just want to welcome everyone to the galleries. This is the day 2 of open public galleries, so it's great to have people visiting us here today. But that also means that they can't participate in what happens here on the floor to listen to the PPS members that are up there guiding you along your way. All right. Oral questions. Question orale, the leader of the official opposition.
We get some answers in question period. Fraud, Mr. Speaker, fraud on the government. That's the charge the RCMP considered laying against the Prime Minister for taking an exotic holiday as a free gift in 2016. Recent documents show the RCMP knew he committed the illegal act, but they also knew there was a loophole that he could have used. As silly as it might sound, the Prime Minister could have written himself a note, given himself permission to take the holiday. So my question is this: did the Prime Minister give himself permission to take that free holiday in 2016?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
No, Mr. Speaker. This matter was settled years ago when the Ethics Commissioner released the report. While the Conservatives continue to focus on petty politics and on me, we're going to continue to focus on Canadians, on investing in housing across the country, in $10 a day childcare for families, in continuing to lead on world-class investments in fighting climate change. That is what Canadians expect of us. That is what we continue to do.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there is no statute of limitations on fraud charges, and the Prime Minister is not above the law.
Right.
The criminal code is clear. The only way the Prime Minister is not guilty of fraud is if the Prime Minister gave himself consent to break the law. That is in the criminal code. This is a clear and a straightforward question. I would like a yes or a no answer. Did the Prime Minister give himself permission to get away with committing a criminal fraud offence?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
No, Mr. Speaker. The RCMP looked into this matter and no political interference was around it. They came to their own conclusion. There was nothing to pursue. Further, those findings were independently verified by 2 separate third parties. Despite what the Conservative Party appears to be attempting, politicians do not interfere with the operations of the police in this country. This matter was thoroughly reviewed and closed years ago.
All right. I'm going to try to keep so we can hear. We do have people in the galleries today that are watching this as well. So, the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, new documents revealed that the RCMP knew that the Prime Minister took the holiday, that it was illegal, that he did it. The RCMP knew it. There was no question of that. The only question the RCMP had, according to their own documents, was whether he gave himself permission to do that. The Prime Minister just said he didn't. Is he willing to meet with the RCMP now, give them that information, and they can proceed as they see fit? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The RCMP addressed the matters raised by the Conservatives years ago. The members opposite know very well this is the case, but the Conservative Party seems to have difficulty understanding that in a strong democratic country, neither opposition politicians nor government can tell the police what to investigate, what not to investigate. The RCMP do their job. Why doesn't the Conservative Party believe the RCMP?
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's double talk is ridiculous. The RCMP, thought about laying criminal charges, but it didn't do it because the federal leader decided that he had the right to give himself a gift of $200,000. He said it just a few minutes ago. He said that this dates back, and he himself has never hesitated to denounce things that have happened far before that. Doesn't he know that it's never too late to report a crime? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, this issue was settled a number of years ago, but obviously we recognize the independence and the important work done by the RCMP in this country, and the Conservatives don't understand that in their desire to launch personal attacks. They need to understand that the work was done at all levels, and this is an issue that has been closed. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-Lérable. Okay, if I understand then, the Prime Minister will never come back to stories that happened a number of years ago, because that's what he's trying to tell us, and yet the Prime Minister himself recognized a few minutes ago that he did not give himself permission to receive a gift of over $200,000 for a private vacation for himself and his family. Mr. Speaker, the RCMP considered laying fraud charges against the Prime Minister, but it didn't do that for that very reason. Mr. Speaker, why does the Prime Minister not recognize his error and meet with the RCMP to explain himself? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the RCMP studied that matter a number of years ago, and the Conservative Party is simply seeking to talk about this issue to distract from the fact that we have presented a budget that delivers housing for Canadians and that delivers $10 a day daycare across the country, and that is protecting us from a climate crisis. And all the Conservatives are trying to do is to play petty politics, make partisan attacks, and try and distract Canadians from the fact that their party has no answer for the issues that are concerning Canadians. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is being disrespectful to Quebecers, Canadians, and is disrespecting Ukrainians. When the Syrian refugees came to Canada, he chartered flights. He brought them winter coats. Everyone got their selfie, even people who worked in security at the airport. So I would like to ask the Prime Minister if there was a real airlift to help not if, but when he will put in place an airlift for Ukrainian refugees. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. We are proceeding safely and effectively for Ukrainians who are coming to Canada. There is no limit to the number of applicants. We have given priority to Ukrainians who wish to come to Canada, and those who are here on a temporary basis can stay longer. Thank you. Thanks to the Emergency Travel Fund, there are not as many visa requirements, and that is the safest and most effective way to act. Since January, we have welcomed over 17,000 Ukrainian refugees, and we're going to welcome more. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. After 62 days of war, he has the gall to say rapid. A government that cannot explain how to give biometric testing to those people. They say, here's some Aeroplan points. It doesn't cost them a penny. They are not chartering flights, and so they are just trying to advertise for Air Canada. Will the government show respect to the Ukrainians and charter damn flights? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I understand that the leader of the Bloc Québécois is getting indignant in this place, but the reality is that our public servants and our partners are working diligently to ensure expedited processing of Ukrainians' refugee claims, and that's what we've done. We are going to continue to take all measures to expedite the arrival of Ukrainian families here in Canada. And we are going to continue to do more all the time. It is very difficult for those families, and we're here to help them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Throughout this pandemic and the cost of living rising crisis, we see working Canadians, working class families that are hurt hard and we see the super rich that continue to make record profits and gain more wealth and power. Another example of this is the potential merger of Rogers Shaw. It's only going to result in massive layoffs for workers and increased costs for families. So will the Liberals stand on the side of workers, Canadians, and prevent this deal from going through and make sure we keep the prices of cell phones and cellular services low?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we well know that Canadians have paid almost some of the highest prices for wireless and internet in the world. That's why a number of years ago we made a pledge to decrease average cell phone bills in this country by 25%, and that actually happened, Mr. Speaker. We drove down prices by working to ensure that there's both competition and quality infrastructure for Canadians. We will continue to be there to make sure that access to data is affordable and reliable everywhere across the country, including with massive historic investments in rural broadband and cell phone access.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. It's true that the cost of services is very high in Canada, and this merger is going to worsen the situation. So it's clear that if this merger happens, it's going to increase telephone prices. It's going to cause the loss of countless jobs. So will the Liberals stand with Canadians and stop this merger, yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, for years we have been working to lower cell phone and internet prices for Canadians. We've seen the average prices for cell phones drop by 25%. We know that competition and innovation and affordable prices are essential for communications in Canada, and that's why we are always working to improve services and drop prices, including with record investments. In 5 years, we invested more than 10 times than during the certain conservative government's reign to ensure rural connectivity, and we're going to continue that work.
Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday in response to repeated questions about what documents would be available for the inquiry into the use of the Emergencies Act, the Minister of Emergency Preparedness indicated that documents covered by privilege, such as the advice of the Justice Department to Cabinet, would not be disclosed. The measures used by this government represent the most significant infringement on the civil liberties of Canadians in a generation. Canadians deserve full transparency. Will they disclose their internal analysis that showed they met the threshold for the Emergencies Act and the Justice Department's private opinion, or are they just going to keep hiding this information from Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
When the illegal blockades forced borders to close, businesses to shut, workers to be laid off, it was Canadians who paid the biggest price. It was only after we got advice from law enforcement that we invoked the Emergencies Act. It was necessary, and it worked. We launched a full-scale independent inquiry appointing Justice Rouleau as commissioner. He has the power to compel witnesses, documents, information, including classified information. Mr. Speaker, we look forward to cooperating with the inquiry to foster transparency, accountability, and incorporating lessons learned so that this never happens again. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, Conservatives and Canada's Civil Liberties Union were disturbed to see that the Liberals are attempting to control the scope of the inquiry into the Emergencies Act by directing the Commissioner to focus on the actions of the protesters, not the actions of the government. The purpose of this inquiry is not to hold Canadian protesters accountable, but to hold the government accountable when using extraordinary powers. Now, the government has tasked the Commissioner to gather evidence against the protesters, but this begs the question, if the government doesn't already have this evidence, how could they have justified invoking the Act in the first place?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage my honourable colleague to read the order in council, which specifically says that the judge can look into the conduct of police enforcement. So read the order in council. We want to shine a light on the sober events that led to the invocation of the Emergencies Act. I would encourage my colleague to recall that businesses were shut down, that workers were laid off, that residents were terrorized in their own homes, Mr. Speaker. We embrace this inquiry. It's an important hallmark of our democracy, and we look forward to cooperating with the judge. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Prime Minister finally set up the inquiry into the declaration of an emergency situation. The Minister of Public Safety said that we intend to cooperate with Justice Rouleau in the contents of his inquiry so he can do his work. Well, that's wonderful. We all want to shed light on this situation. Will the Prime Minister pledge to give the Commissioner access to all documents, including those that are covered by Cabinet secrecy? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to be clear. We are shedding light on events that happened while this law was invoked. I invite people to remember the residents of Ottawa who were taken hostage in their own homes. And I would also like to remind the Conservative Party that hundreds of charges were laid, charges that were very serious involving firearms that were there to possibly commit crimes. So we're going to cooperate with Justice Rouleau. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During the debate on the Emergencies Act, there were 13 points in the order in Council, and there were many things that were not clear. Today, we're asking Justice Rouleau to shed light on this matter. But so can they explain to us why they're trying to control the scope of the inquiry with biased questions? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I would like to encourage my colleague to read the order in Council. The directives are there. The directives are there for Justice Rouleau. We're going to cooperate with the Commissioner to ensure transparency. We had a number of reasons to invoke this act, and we need to be fair to all Canadians, and we need to be transparent about this process. Thank you.
Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians need answers about the government's invocation of the Emergencies Act. The key question is whether the invocation of these extraordinary powers met the legal requirements of the Act, a question Justice Rouleau and the public inquiry need to answer. In order to do that, Justice Rouleau needs access to documents covered by Cabinet confidence. Will the Prime Minister, will the government waive Cabinet confidence?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are prepared to shine a light in cooperation with the judge on the circumstances that led to the invocation of the Act. And I would remind my honourable colleagues, particularly from the Conservative Party of Canada, that individuals were arrested as a result of their illegal conduct at borders, which shut down businesses, which required people to be laid off, which had members of this community right here in Ottawa be hostages in their own home, Mr. Speaker. We're prepared to go through all of that in cooperation with the judge so that there's transparency and accountability in conjunction with this commission. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Have a little order in this, just so we can hear the answers to the questions, and so the people visiting us here can hear the answers as well. The Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the Emergencies Act is only supposed to be used when there is no other law in Canada able to deal with the situation. It's not clear that threshold was met. When emergency powers are used in a democracy, the question that must be answered is, did the government act lawfully in the invocation of those powers? To answer that question, Justice Rouleau needs Cabinet documents. Prime Minister Harper waived Cabinet confidence in the Vice Admiral Mark Norman case and in the Senator Mike Duffy case. Will the government do the same for this public inquiry?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
I would encourage my colleagues to read the order in Council, which specifically says that the judge has the independent power to compel witnesses, to compel information, to compel other documents, which indeed includes classified information. We want to shine a light on the circumstances that led to the invocation of the Act. We on this side of the House and other members in this chamber are confident that it was the right thing to do, and it worked, Mr. Speaker. But in fulfillment of our obligations under the Emergencies Act, we've launched this public inquiry so that there can be transparency, accountability, and integrity, and so that this never happens again.
The Honourable Member for Repentigny. In his report published this morning, the Environment Commissioner said that Canada's hydrogen strategy is based on unrealistic assumptions, which will jeopardize Canada's ability to reach its emission reduction targets. The Commissioner is telling Ottawa to go back to the drawing board, but the Minister of the Environment is counting on this strategy as part of his emissions reductions plan for 2030. So we know that his plan is therefore based on unrealistic assumptions. Is that the only part of the plan that is based on unrealistic assumptions? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for her question. I'd also like to thank the Commissioner for his hard work. I've been following his work for over 2 decades, and his work is very important for our government, and it should be for all governments because it helps us do better. We want our climate emergency plan to be the best in the world, and it's based on hydrogen, and that's what we're working on. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Let's look at another report, Mr. Speaker, which is just as concerning in terms of the environment. It's from the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. The office says that the number of natural disasters will rise to 560 per year by 2030. It talks about floods, droughts, extreme temperatures. All of that is going to increase by 40% in only 8 short years. The UN calls this a spiral of self-destruction. Did the Minister of the Environment take that into account before approving Baie du Nord and its 1 billion barrels of oil? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Climate change is something that we take very seriously on this side of the House, and that is why we began last year work with a group of experts to guide the government in adopting its first national adaptation strategy that will be adopted this year. We are working with the provinces and territories, as well as Indigenous peoples and municipalities, as well as other partners, to devise this new strategy. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Friday was Earth Day, Mr. Speaker, and on that opportunity, I'd like to quote the Environment Minister, who said in a press release, "Today, Canadians join people around the world to celebrate our natural environment and focus on everything we do to keep our shared home healthy." Can the Minister share what he reflected on to keep our shared home healthy before approving Baie du Nord and its 1 billion barrels of oil? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Mr. Speaker, I would like to refer my honourable colleague to the most recent GHG emissions report in Canada, which showed that before the pandemic, despite an increase of thousands of barrels of oil in Canada, our emissions went down, and so that is very impressive. And that means that we're a leader in terms of climate change. Thank you.
Well, there's all kinds of noise from all around. The Honourable Member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, from the Liberal government that brought us a disastrous air passenger bill of rights that has been panned by consumer groups as completely useless, it now wants to do a so-called homebuyers bill of rights. Page 47 of the budget says this is under provincial jurisdiction. Could the Minister of Housing please enlighten us exactly how the government will protect consumers in a home sale under provincial jurisdiction when it can't even protect a passenger from a cancelled flight under its own jurisdiction?
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Our government has always believed in collaboration with all orders of government to benefit Canadians. And the member opposite should know that we have a strong track record on provincial, federal, territorial, and municipal collaboration. Newsflash, we now have affordable childcare in Canada. That is as a result of collaboration between our government and 10 provinces and 3 territories, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Rather than tackling the supply issues driving the housing and affordability crisis, the NDP Liberal government has doubled down on their failed approach. The NDP Liberal budget promises the same failed programs that won't see any additional houses built this year or help a Canadian family afford a home who otherwise couldn't. The average home price in Canada is now $868,000, up nearly 30% in the last year alone. Canadians need help now. When will the Liberal government take this housing crisis seriously?
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
What Canadians don't need is a mishmash of conflicting policies from the official opposition. The leader of the official opposition believes that we should download costs of housing to municipalities. The member from Mission Matsqui Fraser Canyon believes we should download costs to provinces. The member from Calgary Centre believes that we should not ban foreign owners. The member from Dundas South Glengarry believes that we should pull back from federal investments in housing. The member from Calgary Centre doesn't believe in building multi-unit buildings for affordable housing. This party doesn't get its story straight on housing, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for South Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Canada, as we just heard, the average price of a home is $868,000, but in South Surrey White Rock, the average is $1.2 million, and that's not even for a detached home. Rather than dealing with the supply shortage, this government is doubling down on its failed policies and programs. Canadians don't want to co-own their homes with this tax and spend government. They don't trust this government. To the minister, when is this government going to get serious, abandon its failed policies, increase supply, and cut red tape?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, the best way to deal with housing affordability is to increase housing supply and to do it faster. Unfortunately, the member opposite is so concerned about housing supply, she should talk to her leader, who opposes our collaboration with municipalities to increase housing supply. She should talk to her colleague from Calgary Centre, who opposes a ban for foreign ownership. She should talk to her colleague from Mission Matsqui Fraser Canyon, who believes we should just download the costs to provinces. She should talk to her colleague from Dundas South Glengarry, who believes we should just get out of the whole national housing strategy, Mr. Speaker.
I mean, we did really a lot better this time. We're at question 22. The honourable member for Peterborough-Kawartha.
Zach has a job offer in my riding of Peterborough-Kawartha, but he cannot find affordable housing. Now, this is a common theme across the country. A lot of job vacancies, but no housing. How can we fix the employment crisis when we have a housing crisis? People need a place to live. It is a basic human need. How is Zach supposed to pay off his student debt if he cannot accept job offers? To the housing minister, will he continue to roll out one failed program after another, and is Zach the latest victim of his housing policy failure?
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Member talks about housing as a basic right. Guess what? When we brought the National Housing Strategy Act to recognize housing as a human right, that party voted against it. That is not...
Are we gonna come to order here? Awesome. Are we ready to continue? All right, the Minister of Housing, and I will allow him to restart his answer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The solution to housing affordability is housing supply, Mr. Speaker. We're collaborating with municipalities through the Housing Accelerator Fund to build 100,000 new homes in the next two years and double the number of new homes built in the next 10 years. We're also extending supports through the first-time homebuyer incentive and the tax-free savings account to first-time home buyers. We're also tackling speculation by banning foreign ownership of Canadian residential real estate in the next 2 years, and we're building more affordable housing, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, today the Environment Commissioner released another series of scathing reports on this government's climate failures. He showed that they're failing on carbon pricing, letting big polluters off the hook while Indigenous communities pay the price, failing to reduce emissions, relying on non-existent policies that undermine their credibility, failing on climate infrastructure, they can't even keep track of the impacts of their projects, and on a just transition, they are leaving workers and communities behind. How can Canadians trust this government's promises when we see failure after failure after failure after failure?
Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for her question. As I said earlier, we welcome the Commissioner's latest report and thanked him for his findings. I don't know what's so controversial about that, Mr. Speaker. Over the last 6 years, we've made major progress on everything from putting a price on pollution to protecting historic amounts of our lands and water. And as we outlined in Budget 2022 and the emissions reduction plan, we are transitioning to a clean economy. We are putting a cap on emissions from Canada's oil and gas sector, and we're putting a price on pollution through to 2030. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay.
Well, God help our little planet with a minister like that in charge. Because if he read the Environment Commissioner's report, he would point out that energy workers are facing a potential economic upheaval as devastating as the collapse of the cod fishery in the 1990s.
I mean, I know the member from Timmins, James Bay has a big voice, but I'm having trouble hearing it all the way up here. And you know what? This is what I'm going to do. A lot of times I'm getting ministers to repeat their answers. Well, I'm going to ask the member for Timmins, James Bay to repeat his question. Start from the beginning.
Well, Mr. Speaker, to the point, God help our planet with answers like that from the minister, because the Environment Commissioner today warned that energy workers are facing a potential economic upheaval as devastating as the collapse of the cod fisheries in the 1990s, and slogans and promises about a so-called just transition just won't cut it. The Commissioner reminds us this government has broken every environmental promise they made, and now they're breaking faith with energy workers and their families. It's simple. The climate crisis is here. How can that minister stand in this House and continue to show such a dismal record of failure?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Commissioner for the report, notwithstanding some concerns with the findings. Consultations on legislation were launched while I was Minister of Natural Resources, and I'm proud to say I'm continuing that work as Minister of Labour alongside my successor and my colleagues. We had a recent action. We've had a ministerial roundtable on sustainable jobs. We've had the relaunch of consultations on legislation and the Sustainable Jobs Training Centre, which demonstrate our government's ongoing commitment to achieving a transition that will lower emissions, build up renewables, and make sure that our workers are at the centre of it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, distress centres are life-saving resources in our communities, which have seen a surge in demand for their services since the onset of the pandemic. In my riding of Etobicoke Lakeshore, the Assaulted Women's Helpline recently received a much-needed infusion of $250,000 of federal support. Wow. This organization operates two crisis lines. One is for women who are experiencing domestic and gender-based violence, and the other, the Senior Safety Line, is specifically for seniors who are experiencing all forms of abuse. Can the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions update the House on how our government is supporting these types of critical supports in Canada? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, Minister of Mental Health and Addictions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for Etobicoke Lakeshore for his ongoing impressive leadership, and all people in Canada deserve access to critical mental health services and resources. Yes, sir.
Hold on. I was just making sure the minister didn't use up all of her time. The Honourable Minister of Mental Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll just thank him for his advocacy now, and all people in Canada deserve access to critical mental health resources. Yesterday, I was able to announce $2 million for the Centre for Mental Health and Addiction to help develop resources to assist distress centres in meeting the diverse needs of disproportionately affected people, as well as almost $1.8 million for 13 distress centres across Canada to help them better connect to appropriate supports. This funding is part of $50 million federal commitment to distress centres and to build a network to assure people get what they need when they need it.
The Honourable Member for Abbotsford.
The Bank of Canada Governor admitted that inflation is much higher than expected. When asked how to protect Canada's finance, when asked to explain how to protect Canada's finances, he said, "Don't spend too much." We know the Prime Minister doesn't think about monetary policy, but Conservatives do and Canadians do. And Canadians are the ones paying the price for the Prime Minister's monetary illiteracy. Higher grocery bills, gas bills, interest rates. Will this Prime Minister recognize that his reckless borrowing and spending is making things worse for Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, it's ironic
that this question comes from a Conservative colleague when in their electoral platform they committed to spend $168 billion. The IMF has just confirmed that our economy is going to see the highest growth among G7 countries both this year and next year. Canadians have created over 3.5 million jobs. These are well-paying jobs that will help Canadians meet the cost of living that we see increasing all over the world due to the war in Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, we have been excellent stewards of the economy, and the Conservatives know it.
The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Inflation hit 6.7% last month, a 31-year high and well above the Bank of Canada's predictions. Canadians are already struggling to pay their bills, fill up at the pump, and put food on the table. Unfortunately, Budget 2022 failed to provide any credible solutions, and with the extensive, unfocused spending, it's only going to get worse. The simple fact is, Canadians can't afford this Liberal NDP government. When will the minister acknowledge this cost of living crisis we are living in and work on real solutions?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Tourism and the Associate Minister of National.
Mr. Speaker, we are seeing inflation rise right around the world. We know that that is due to the war in Ukraine, among other things. But what I would like to remind the Conservatives is that in our budget, we have put forward a plethora of measures in order to ensure that housing would be more affordable, to ensure that childcare would be more affordable. And prior to that, Mr. Speaker, we lowered taxes for the middle class on 2 occasions, and the Conservatives voted against it. We have helped raise 300,000 children out of poverty thanks to the Canada Child Benefit, and we are supporting vulnerable seniors with an increase in our supports for them. Mr. Speaker, we are there for Canadians.
The honourable member for Prince Albert.
Inflation is at a 31-year high. Canadians are suffering under rising prices for gas, groceries, and housing. A good way to help Canadians is by ensuring the relationship with the U.S. remains strong and stable. Yet this government continues to disappoint. Tariffs on our lumber, threats to our auto sector, and the most punishing Buy American provisions we've ever seen. We know the Prime Minister likes to fly around for photo ops and surfing trips. Maybe he could add a few flights to D.C. to the flight plan. My question to the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, when will he get to work?
Good question. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The member opposite is an experienced member of the Trade Committee. He's actually been on trade trips with the Minister of International Trade to Washington, D.C. The Prime Minister has also been in Washington, D.C., engaging with Joseph Biden. What's very important, Mr. Speaker, is that we've always taken a Team Canada approach. That's been encouraged to us by all stakeholders, by witnesses that have come before the committee, where that member has been present. We will continue to take a nonpartisan approach to continuing the dialogue with our biggest trading partner to secure jobs and opportunity for Canadians and for Americans, because it serves both sides of the border. Thank you.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, as the cost of food is going up, the price of housing is going up, and the price of basic necessities is going up, we're not talking about luxury goods, but essentials here. Inflation is at 6.7%, and this government refuses to control its spending. However, Mr. Speaker, in France, the inflation rate is at 4.5%. Why? Because the government has decided to freeze rate increases. Why did the government refuse our request to not increase the Liberal carbon tax? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, you know what will help Canadians to face the rising cost of living? Paychecks, Mr. Speaker. We're talking about 3.5 million jobs that were created in recent years, Mr. Speaker. Our economic growth is strong, and in fact, the strongest amongst the G7 countries this year and next year, according to experts. And we are creating good jobs, well-paying jobs for Canadians. The honourable member for La Pointe-à-l'Île. Mr. Speaker, the appointment of a unilingual English-speaking board at CN has raised a lot of criticism, but it's hard to believe that we'll see a real change in culture at CN. Why is that? Because the Prime Minister, in charge of holding him to account at CN, spends his time giving positions to people who don't speak a word of French. He did it with the Lieutenant Governor of New Brunswick and with the Governor General. He did it with several ministers. What credibility does he have left to criticize CN? They're one and the same. The Honourable Minister of Official Languages. Thank you. I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. Mr. Speaker, our two official languages are at the heart of Canadian culture and identity. All Canadians deserve to be served in the official language of their choice, even in companies like CN. The fact that they don't have francophones on the board at CN is unacceptable, and we're going to solve this situation as quickly as possible. We're very happy to be revising the Official Languages Act, and we will make sure the necessary studies are done to solve this situation. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, Manon Tomby, a young mother applying for permanent residency, has been abandoned by Immigration Canada. While going through the sudden death of her spouse, she has learned that since he was the principal applicant on their file, everything has fallen through. Because her spouse died, she has to redo the 31-month-long process. Everyone agrees that this never should have happened and that the administration lacked heart. Will the minister ensure that Manon Tomby's file will continue to move forward and that she will not have to start everything over again? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the member from the bloc for his question and for his attention to immigration files. I would like to offer my sincerest condolences to Madame Tomby. While I cannot comment on this particular file in the House, I will be following up on this file in particular. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, many Canadians, including 3 strong, enterprising women in my riding, have been unceremoniously put on indefinite leave without pay by these Liberals. Crystal, Angela, and Kathy lost their jobs at Canada Post because of this government's mandate absurdity. Livelihoods taken away, families going without, and for what purpose? Each of these women work in small towns. 2 of the 3 are postal agents that work alone. And one is now not even allowed to enter the building of the business she worked so hard to build. This needs to end. Will the minister today commit to ending these unscientific mandates?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Speaker, having a fully vaccinated workforce makes our workforces in our communities safer. We asked employees of the federal public to step up, and they stepped up. 99% of the public servants got fully vaccinated. We are committed to review this policy every 6 months, and that review is underway, Mr. Speaker. Any decisions will be based on science and the advice of public health officials. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We can send notes back and forth. If somebody is not liking what's going on the floor, we can always just write a note, send it over to the ministers, and express ourselves that way rather than having to shout. The Honourable Member for Peace River Westlock.
Mr. Speaker, Iceland, Sweden, Ireland, France, the UK, these are just a few of the countries that have dropped all their mandates. However, this government, without any evidence, is continuing to bar Canadians from getting on airplanes to visit the loved ones they so want to see. Yep. They're spending $30 million to prevent Canadians from getting on airplanes. On what day will the minister allow people to fly and end the mandates?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Speaker, I want to thank my colleagues for reminding Canadians of how many countries have put together a mandate to protect the health and safety of travellers, of those who work in the travelling sector. Mr. Speaker, everything we've done so far is intended to protect the health of Canadians. And we've always been guided by the advice that we receive from our experts. I'm not going to take advice from the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to take advice from our scientists, from our doctors, and we will constantly review our policies and do the right thing for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister claimed the only way out of the pandemic was through vaccination. Now, the point of vaccination is to induce an immune response. Immune response can also be measured through antibody testing, but the government won't accept those tests. Instead, the government continues to deny travel to those who haven't had the shots, but who do have a strong immune response due to previous infection. When will the Prime Minister end his cruel and inhumane travel bans on Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, talking down vaccine does not help Canadians, nor does it help our health and safety in Canada. Mr. Speaker, many Conservative Party members were against vaccines when all doctors were saying vaccines were the right thing for Canadians. In fact, Mr. Speaker...
Order. 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 Let's just... You ready? All right. The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the Conservatives' noise, I'm going to tell you that we are going to continue to do whatever we can to protect the health and safety of Canadians, the travellers, and those who work in the travelling sector. We are always reassessing these decisions, Mr. Speaker. We don't make these decisions lightly. We know that they are important, and we will continue to be guided by science, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Sudbury.
Mr. Speaker, last week the government supported the National Conservancy of Canada's Boreal Lands project, the largest private conservation project in Canada. The Boreal Wildlands is a project of global significance and a rare opportunity to have a direct impact on biodiversity loss and climate change. Can the Minister of Climate Change tell the House how this is a critical step in our journey towards conserving 25% of Canada's land and water by 2025? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for her question. Protecting and conserving nature is one of the most important steps we can take to halt the loss of biodiversity while addressing climate change and advancing Indigenous reconciliation. Nature is the glue that binds all of these important causes together. The project will protect 15,000 square kilometers of critical habitat for species at risk like caribou. Last week on Earth Day, we celebrated the Boreal Forest as the largest private conservation project ever in Canada. And there is another important milestone as our government works to conserve 25% of Canada's land and oceans by 2025. Thank you.
For Mission Mascui Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, over the last 2 weeks, I've received call after call after call from angry constituents about the poor service they received at Passport Canada offices, just like your constituents. People are regularly lining up at 4 or 5 a.m. just to see an agent. The government of Canada knew there was going to be a surge in applications, yet they did nothing about the expected demand. Why is Passport Canada offering such poor service, and why don't they get their ducks in a row and give Canadians the service they expect from a key government office?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are traveling again, and a significant increase in demand for passports has resulted in long lineups and wait times for in-person service. We understand that this is difficult and stressful. We have in fact hired an additional 500 passport officers to help process this. We have made Service Canadas available to ensure that individuals who need to travel on a non-urgent basis can deposit their applications. We will continue to work very hard right across the country to meet this increased demand. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Passport processing delays are hitting Canadians across this country, and rural Canadians, like people in Hastings, Lennox and Addington, are no different. One constituent, John, posted about his experience with his mother trying to book an appointment. Phoning in results in disconnection. The website constantly crashes, and there are ridiculously long delays at in-person offices. If this was a private sector, they would be shut down. This is unacceptable in a first world nation like Canada. Mr. Speaker, when will this government do its job and get passports for Canadians like John and his mother?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We understand that after 2 years, Canadians are interested in traveling. Many people had their passports expired during this time. Unfortunately, we have a huge surge in demand. We have hired 500 additional passport officers to help process this. We have a simplified processing to replace expired passports of up to 5 years. We've opened more client counters and passport offices. We are operating extended hours, both into the evening. Passport officers are working around the clock on weekends to do their very best to serve Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Shepherd.
Dr. Rupinder Karai went to the passport office to get expedited service for her family's passports. Passport Canada made her wait 4 hours. They took all of the family's passports, applications, but not for her husband Amandeep because he wasn't there on purpose. Amandeep was working a full-day shift as a radiologist despite having stage 4 colon cancer. The passports were for a final family vacation, which is now cancelled. To the Minister, government is about people, not process. Is this level of service acceptable to Rupinder and Amandeep?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to my colleague, I want to say that that is exactly why passport officers are working around the clock. They are working late hours. We have hired additional officers. We have opened up more Service Canada centres to meet this rising demand to renew passports. We are ensuring that passport officers are working through the weekend. We have an incredible surge in demand, unlike anything we've seen before. But despite all of that, passport officers, Service Canada personnel are working round the clock because their number one job is to serve Canadians, and that's what they're working hard to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener South, Hespeller.
Mr. Speaker, we know how important childcare is for families in our economic recovery, but we know how expensive it's been for families. Parents in Ontario have been paying some of the highest fees in the country. We also know that we need to grow the number of spaces available so that all families can benefit. Could the Minister please update the House on the government's progress towards building a Canada-wide early learning and childcare system and what it will mean for Ontario's families?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. Mr. Speaker, in just under a year, we have signed childcare agreements with every single province and territory. And Mr. Speaker, right here in Ontario, that means that families will see by the end of this calendar year savings of up to $6,000 per child in licensed childcare. That's an incredible savings for a family. It also means that we're going to increase the number of spaces in Ontario by 86,000 because we know that it's not just about affordability, it's also about accessibility. Hire more ECEs and deliver quality childcare for families in this province. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Nunavut.
I spoke with Kayak Robinson, who was a commissioner for the MMIWG. Robinson continues to advocate for the implementation of calls to justice, which demands greater transparency and accountability from our government and institutions. Yet the 2022 budget was silent on new commitments to protect Indigenous girls, women, and Two-Spirit people. When will this government take real action on reconciliation and fund transformative action?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member opposite for the question. And I'd like to remind her that there is $2.2 billion in a federal pathway to ensure missing and murdered Indigenous women. But when you look at the budget, you also have to look at the investments we've made towards housing, the investments we've made towards Jordan's Principle, the investments we've made towards mental health. These will all help Indigenous women. Just because it's not in a line item in the budget doesn't mean we're not helping Indigenous women, and we're out there and making sure that it's safe and supported, and we'll continue to do so as a government.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
The Minister said Afghans cannot get their biometrics completed in Afghanistan, yet he's insisting that it must be done. The lives of the family members of Afghan interpreters, collaborators, human rights defenders, women and girls are at risk every minute of the day, and the Liberals are immobilized by red tape. The government can collect biometrics upon arrival, yet they're refusing to act on this viable solution to get people to safety. So to the minister, who has the power to help, what is more important, paperwork or saving lives?
Yeah.
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for her advocacy for vulnerable Afghans. It is indeed the vulnerability of the people who are in Afghanistan that has justified such an extraordinary response by the Government of Canada. And I'd remind her that we've committed to make one of the most substantial resettlement efforts of any country in the world, with 40,000 Afghan refugees destined to be settled in Canada. To date, more than 11,500 are already here. As part of that process, we want to maintain the integrity of the process so Canadians continue to support these massive efforts that we're making to resettle some of the world's most vulnerable, including a rigorous security screening process. We're going to continue to do whatever we can to help these vulnerable people. It's the right thing to do, and I'm proud to be a part of this effort.
And that's all the time we have for question period today. C'est tout le temps qu'on a pour la période de questions. Now we go back into orders of the day.
Of Ways and Means motion number 3 on the budgetary policy and on the amendment of Mr. Fast.
I just make sure everybody gets out as soon as they can get out, or keep their conversations in the lobbies. Before I call on the member for Perth Wellington.
Just stay there. Just hold on a second. Okay.